She walked into the hospital room dressed like she was attending a business meeting, not a goodbye, and with her entire family behind her. She placed divorce papers in his shaking hands, telling him to sign quickly because his dying father was nothing but a burden and a poor man's legacy was not worth her time, while she had no idea that the man lying in that bed had just left his son a $3 billion inheritance. The air inside the VIP hospital suite felt too clean, too quiet, and too bright, like the kind of space built to soften tragedy with luxury. Machines hummed gently, monitors blinked, and the smell of antiseptic mixed with expensive cologne and perfume, as if even grief had been dressed for appearance. Marcus Holloway sat beside the bed holding his father's hand with both of his palms pressed around it as if warmth alone could keep life from slipping away. His father Jeremiah Holloway looked smaller than Marcus had ever seen him, his skin pale, his breathing shallow, his eyes half open, but still carrying that same calm strength that had guided Marcus through every hard year. Marcus's face was wet with tears he had stopped wiping because the grief came faster than his hands could keep up. He whispered to his father softly, telling him he was there, telling him he was not alone, and telling him he loved him. Jeremiah's fingers twitched slightly in response, and Marcus held on tighter. Then the door opened. And the sound that entered the room was not compassion. It was heels clicking sharply like a countdown. Selena Holloway stepped inside first. She wore a fitted blazer and a smooth, confident smile, the kind of smile people wear when they believe they are winning. Behind her came her mother, her brother, her cousin, and her aunt, all dressed like spectators arriving for a show rather than family arriving for support. 2 uniformed officers stood in the hallway near the VIP sign, watching quietly as if even the hospital expected trouble. Marcus turned slowly, confused at first because he did not expect his wife to bring a crowd into this moment. Selena did not greet Jeremiah. She did not ask how he was. She did not touch Marcus's shoulder. She walked straight to the foot of the bed, glanced at Jeremiah like he was an inconvenience, then looked at Marcus and sighed dramatically. She said she was sorry it had come to this, but she could not keep wasting her life attached to a man whose family had nothing to offer. Her mother nodded approving as if this was a smart business decision. Marcus blinked slowly, struggling to process the cruelty entering the room like cold air. He asked Selena quietly what she was doing. Selena reached into a folder, pulling out papers, then stepped closer and placed them on Marcus's lap. Divorce papers. She told him to sign. She said she wanted it finalized immediately. She said she refused to stay married to a man who could not elevate her. She said she was tired of being patient, tired of waiting, tired of watching her friends marry men with real money, real influence, and real futures. Her brother laughed under his breath, saying Marcus had always been too soft. Her aunt smirked, saying Selena should have left years ago. Marcus stared at the papers, then looked at Selena with disbelief. He asked her why now. Selena leaned forward, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. She said, because your father is dying, and once he is gone you will have nothing left to cling to. She said she knew how this goes, poor families pass down nothing but debt. She said she refused to be stuck paying hospital bills, burying a man who never did anything for her. Marcus's throat tightened. He looked at his father's face, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest, and he felt a pain so deep it made his body go numb. He told Selena softly that this was his father and that this room was not the place for this. Selena shrugged, saying life does not pause for grief and that she had already wasted enough time. She said she deserved better. She said she worked too hard to be tied to struggle. She said she was finally ready to move on. Jeremiah's eyes opened slightly as if the words reached him through the haze. Marcus noticed and leaned closer, whispering to his father, telling him not to listen. Selena's mother stepped forward, then saying Marcus should be grateful Selena stayed as long as she did. She said Selena had been loyal through years of mediocrity. She said now it was time for Selena to choose herself. Marcus's hands shook as he held the papers. He could barely breathe. But not because of fear. Because of shock. He never imagined betrayal could walk into a hospital room with perfume and confidence. Selena pointed at the signature line, telling him to sign quickly. She said the lawyer was waiting. She said she wanted everything clean. She said she did not want any confusion later. Marcus looked at her and asked quietly what she thought she was entitled to. Selena laughed. She said nothing because you have nothing. She said she was not here for money, she was here for freedom. But her eyes told the truth. She believed she was cutting herself loose before poverty swallowed her. She believed she was escaping. What she did not know, what no one in that room knew except Jeremiah and the private attorney standing silently outside the door, was that Jeremiah Holloway was not poor. Jeremiah Holloway was a secret billionaire. A man who built an empire under quiet trusts and hidden holding companies. A man who never wore wealth like a costume. A man who never needed the world to know his name. He lived modestly by choice. He raised Marcus to value humility and discipline. He tested people by staying invisible. And now in his final hours he had already signed documents leaving everything. $3 billion. To his son. Not tomorrow. Not eventually. But legally already completed. The inheritance was locked. The transfer was sealed. The only remaining step was to notify Marcus when the time was right. Selena kept talking, calling Jeremiah a burden, calling the family unlucky, and calling Marcus weak. Marcus stared at the papers, feeling the pen Selena pushed into his hand. He looked at his father again. Jeremiah's eyes met his. And in that weak gaze Marcus saw something he had never seen before. A quiet certainty. As if Jeremiah was telling him without words. Let them reveal themselves. Marcus swallowed hard. He picked up the pen. Not because he was defeated. But because he understood something in that moment. This was not just a divorce. This was a final test. And everyone in this room was failing it. Selena smiled wider, believing she had won. Her family leaned in, ready to witness the signature. Marcus lowered the pen toward the page. And the moment he touched ink to paper, the entire future shifted. Because the man they called poor was about to become the heir to $3 billion. And the woman who mocked him in a hospital room was about to learn what real regret feels like. This was only the beginning. The pen scratched across the paper slowly and steadily, and Selena watched his hand like a hawk watching prey, because in her mind this signature was the final proof that she had outgrown him. Marcus signed without trembling, not because he was calm but because he had reached a strange quiet place where pain stops screaming and starts observing. Selena's smile widened, as if she expected him to beg first, to plead, to cry, to promise change. But he did none of that. He simply finished signing, then placed the pen down neatly on the folder. That silence confused her for half a second, but her pride covered it quickly. She snatched the papers off his lap, flipping through them to confirm the signature like someone checking a receipt. Her mother let out a satisfied laugh, then leaned toward her aunt, whispering that Selena finally did the smart thing. Her brother smirked, saying Marcus always knew he was not good enough. Marcus did not respond. He turned back to his father and squeezed his hand gently, as if the room behind him no longer existed. Selena stepped closer to the bed, finally acknowledging Jeremiah for the first time. She looked down at him with cold detachment, then said something that made Marcus's chest tighten. She said, "You should have done more for your son." She said, "If you had been a real father with real success, your son would not be sitting here losing his wife on the same day he loses you." Her family laughed softly. Marcus's jaw tightened. He felt anger rise for the first time, like heat pushing up through grief. But he swallowed it because his father was still breathing. And he refused to give Selena a scene in the final hours of Jeremiah's life. Jeremiah's eyes moved slowly toward Selena. His breathing remained shallow, but there was a shift in his expression. Not fear. Not weakness. But a quiet disappointment. The kind that does not need words. Selena misunderstood that look completely. She thought it was shame. She thought Jeremiah was realizing he failed. She leaned closer and said she hoped he could rest knowing Selena would not be dragged down by this family anymore. Marcus felt his hands tighten around his father's. He whispered to Selena to stop. Selena turned to him, irritated. She told him not to tell her what to do anymore because he was no longer her husband. That sentence landed hard. Not because of the divorce, but because of the cruelty she used to deliver it. Marcus's eyes stung again. He looked at her and said quietly that this was not the time. Selena rolled her eyes, saying there is never a good time to leave a man who is going nowhere. She said she should have listened to her family years ago. Her mother nodded, saying Selena deserved a real man with real money. Her brother laughed, saying Marcus looked like a man who would always be stuck. Marcus looked at them all and realized something chilling. They were not here to say goodbye. They were here to enjoy watching him break. This was entertainment. A performance. And Selena was the star. The door opened slightly and a nurse stepped in softly, asking if everything was okay. Selena smiled sweetly, instantly switching into polite mode, saying yes, everything is fine. The nurse glanced at Marcus's face, then at Jeremiah, then at Selena's family, and her expression tightened. She apologized quietly, then left, closing the door. As soon as the door shut, Selena's sweetness vanished. She told Marcus she would return later to collect the rest of her things from the apartment. She said he should not try to stop her. She said he should not call her. She said he should accept that she was out of his league. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then said one sentence that made Selena pause. He said, "I hope you get everything you think you deserve." Selena laughed again, thinking it was bitterness. She turned toward her family, waving the papers like a flag. They began walking out of the room like a victorious team leaving a courtroom. As they reached the door, Selena stopped and looked back one last time. She looked at Marcus with a smug smile, then said something that felt like a final knife. She said, "When your father dies, do not call me for support because I am not your wife anymore." Then she left. The door clicked shut. The room fell silent again. Marcus exhaled shakily, leaning forward, pressing his forehead gently against his father's hand. Tears fell onto the blanket. He whispered, "I am sorry, Dad." He whispered, "I am sorry you had to hear that." Jeremiah's fingers moved slightly again. Marcus looked up, and for the first time Jeremiah's lips moved. The words were barely audible, but Marcus heard them. He heard his father whisper, "Do not carry her shame." Marcus froze. Because even in weakness his father still sounded like himself. Still guiding. Still steady. Marcus nodded, tears streaming. He whispered, "I will not." Jeremiah's eyes closed again. His breathing slowed. Marcus stayed there holding on. Minutes later the door opened again. This time it was not a nurse. It was a tall older man in a dark suit holding a briefcase. His face was calm, serious and respectful. He stepped inside, closing the door quietly. Marcus looked up confused. The man approached slowly, then spoke in a gentle professional voice. He introduced himself as Mr. Callahan, Jeremiah's private attorney. Marcus blinked, wiping his face. He asked why he was here. Mr. Callahan glanced at Jeremiah, then back at Marcus. He said he had been instructed to wait until Selena left. Marcus's stomach tightened. Mr. Callahan opened the briefcase, pulling out a sealed envelope. He placed it carefully on the table beside Marcus. Then he said the sentence that made the room tilt. He said, "Your father wanted you to receive this before he takes his final breath." Marcus stared at the envelope. His hands trembled as he reached for it. He noticed the thick paper. The official seal. His name written in his father's handwriting. Marcus looked at Jeremiah. Jeremiah's eyes remained closed. But his face looked peaceful. As if he had been waiting for this moment. Mr. Callahan leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice. He said, "Your father was not who the world believed he was." He said Jeremiah Holloway built something bigger than anyone ever knew. Marcus swallowed hard. His heart pounding. Mr. Callahan took out another document and placed it beside the envelope. It was a statement of inheritance. A summary. Numbers. Assets. Trusts. Holdings. Companies. Properties. Marcus's eyes scanned the page. His breath caught. Because the number written there did not look real. $3 billion. Marcus stared as if the ink might change. His mind refused to accept it. He looked at Mr. Callahan. He whispered, "What is this?" Mr. Callahan nodded slowly. He said, "It is yours. He said your father finalized everything weeks ago. He said the wealth was always real but the secrecy was intentional. He said your father wanted to protect you from people who would love you for money instead of for you." Marcus's throat tightened as he realized what just happened. Selena had just mocked him in the same room where the truth was waiting. She had humiliated him thinking he had nothing. While he was sitting beside a man who had just made him a billionaire. Marcus looked at his father. Tears returned, but now they carried a different weight. Not just grief. But awe. He whispered, "Dad." Jeremiah's eyes opened slightly again. And for the first time Marcus saw a faint smile. A weak one. But real. As if Jeremiah was saying, "Now you see." And Marcus did. He finally understood the quiet strength that calmed the patience. It was not weakness. It was discipline. The door outside remained quiet. Selena and her family were gone. But the truth had entered the room. And it was about to change everything. Because now Marcus Holloway was no longer the man they laughed at. He was the heir to $3 billion. And the next chapter would be about what happens when people discover they mocked the wrong man at the wrong time. Marcus stared at the inheritance document until the numbers stopped looking like ink and started feeling like a storm that had been quietly forming behind his entire life. $3 billion. It did not feel like winning. It felt like waking up in a new world while still standing in the old one. He looked at Mr. Callahan again, his voice barely working as he asked why his father never told him. Mr. Callahan sat down slowly, speaking gently, explaining that Jeremiah Holloway built his wealth in silence because he watched what money did to families and he refused to let it poison the one thing he loved most. His son. Mr. Callahan said Jeremiah wanted Marcus to become a man of discipline first. A man who could survive without wealth. So that when wealth arrived it would not own him. Marcus listened, but his mind kept drifting back to Selena's voice in the room. Her laughter. Her family smirking. The way she said his father was a burden. The way she said Marcus would have nothing. The way she looked down at Jeremiah like he was worthless. Marcus felt a wave of rage rise again, but this time it collided with grief and created something sharp. He turned back to his father, holding his hand again. Jeremiah's breathing was slower now, more fragile. Marcus leaned close, whispering that he loved him. Jeremiah's eyes opened slightly and he looked at Marcus with a deep calm that felt like a final lesson. Marcus whispered, "I am sorry, I did not know." Jeremiah's lips moved again and the words came out faint but clear enough. He said, "You did not need to know. He said I needed to know you were ready." Marcus broke. He pressed his forehead to his father's hand, sobbing quietly because the weight of that love was too heavy for his chest. Mr. Callahan stood respectfully near the wall, giving them space. Minutes passed slowly. A nurse entered, checking Jeremiah's vitals, then glanced at Marcus with sympathy. She whispered that time was close. Marcus nodded, holding on tighter. Jeremiah's eyes remained on Marcus as if he was storing the image. Then Jeremiah exhaled softly. His chest rose once more. Then again. Then slowed. And in a quiet moment that felt like the world holding its breath, Jeremiah Holloway passed away. No dramatic sound. No chaos. Just a gentle release. Marcus froze. His hands still wrapped around his father's. His face still close. He whispered, "Dad." But there was no response. The nurse placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus did not move. Tears fell silently. The nurse stepped out to notify staff. Mr. Callahan lowered his head respectfully. The room that had held cruelty only an hour ago now held sacred silence. Marcus sat there for a long time. Then finally he stood slowly. He looked at his father's still face and whispered thank you. Not for the money. For the love. For the protection. For the lesson. Mr. Callahan approached gently, saying he would handle arrangements and legal steps. He told Marcus that Jeremiah's funeral was already planned quietly and paid for. He said Jeremiah did not want Marcus overwhelmed by logistics. Marcus nodded numb. As Marcus walked out of the VIP suite, the hallway felt different. Not because the hospital changed, but because he had. He was no longer the man Selena believed she could crush. He was now carrying grief and power at the same time. And grief does something to a man. It sharpens him. It strips him. It reveals what matters. Marcus went home that night alone. The apartment felt empty because Selena had already begun removing pieces of her life. Her shoes were gone. Her perfume gone. Her laughter gone. The silence was thick. Marcus sat on the couch staring at the divorce papers she left behind. He thought about the timing. How she came to the hospital with her family like a jury. How she humiliated him beside his dying father. How she left believing she was escaping poverty. Marcus did not feel satisfaction yet. He felt something colder. A calm determination. He opened the sealed envelope his father left him. Inside was a handwritten letter. Marcus unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was steady. Jeremiah wrote that he loved Marcus more than anything. He wrote that he hid his wealth because he wanted Marcus to build character. He wrote that people would test Marcus once they discovered the truth. He wrote that Marcus must never use wealth to hurt people. He wrote that money is a tool, not a weapon. He wrote that revenge feels good for a moment but integrity lasts forever. Marcus read the letter twice. Each line felt like his father speaking directly into his chest. He sat there long after finishing. Then he looked at the divorce papers again. He realized Selena did not just leave him. She revealed herself. And now Marcus had the opportunity to respond. Not with violence. Not with cruelty. But with truth. The next morning Selena posted on social media. A vague message about choosing herself. A vague message about choosing herself. About leaving a man who could not match her growth. About stepping into a new chapter. Her friends commented hearts and praise. Her family celebrated. They believed they had watched Selena escape a sinking ship. But while Selena was collecting applause online, Marcus was meeting with attorneys and financial advisors who spoke to him with respect he had never received before. They explained trusts, holdings, properties, private equity stakes, board seats. They explained that Jeremiah's wealth was not just cash. It was ownership. It was power. It was influence. Marcus was now one of the richest private individuals in the country. And no one knew. Yet. Mr. Callahan advised Marcus to keep the inheritance quiet until the funeral. He said the announcement would happen at the reading of the will. He said Jeremiah requested it. Marcus agreed. Because he understood his father's plan. Jeremiah did not want Selena confronted with words. He wanted her confronted with reality. At the funeral Selena would come. Not because she cared. But because appearances mattered to her. Her family would come too. They would sit in the front rows pretending grief. They would whisper about how Marcus was about to struggle. They would assume they were watching a poor man bury his poor father. And then. They would learn who Jeremiah Holloway really was. And what he left behind. The funeral arrived 3 days later. A private chapel filled with people Marcus barely recognized. Business leaders. Bank executives. Community elders. People who spoke Jeremiah's name with reverence. Marcus stood at the front greeting guests, quietly confused by how many powerful people appeared. He realized his father had lived a life far larger than Marcus ever saw. Selena arrived late, wearing black designer clothing, her hair perfect, her face composed. Her family followed behind her, walking like they belonged. Selena approached Marcus with a fake sympathetic expression. She touched his arm lightly, saying she was sorry for his loss. Marcus looked at her calmly, not reacting. Selena whispered that she hoped they could still be cordial. Marcus nodded slightly. Selena's mother leaned in, whispering that Marcus should stay strong. Her tone carried pity. Marcus said nothing. Selena sat with her family near the front, pretending to wipe tears. Marcus watched quietly. Then Mr. Callahan stepped to the podium. He cleared his throat. He announced that Jeremiah Holloway had requested a private reading of his final statement immediately after the service. Selena's eyes flicked toward Marcus briefly. She looked curious but not concerned. Because she still believed there was nothing to inherit. The service ended with quiet hymns. Then the room remained seated as Mr. Callahan began reading. He spoke about Jeremiah's life, his values, and his love for Marcus. Then he paused. He said Jeremiah Holloway was the founder and majority owner of Holloway Capital Holdings. The room murmured. Selena's head snapped up. Her mother stiffened. Her brother frowned. Mr. Callahan continued. He said Jeremiah's net worth at the time of his death was approximately $3 billion. The air changed instantly. Selena's mouth parted slightly. Her family froze. People around them turned slowly, looking. Mr. Callahan continued calmly. He said Jeremiah left the entire inheritance to his only son Marcus Holloway. Not half. Not shared. Not negotiated. All of it. Selena's face drained. Her family stared in shock. Marcus stood still. His expression calm. Because his father had warned him. Truth does not need emotion. It only needs to be spoken. Selena looked at Marcus with wide eyes. Her mind scrambling. Because she realized she handed divorce papers to a man who was already a billionaire. And she did it beside the father who gave him everything. She laughed at him. She mocked him. She left him. And now she understood. She had not escaped poverty. She had divorced $3 billion. And the room watched her realize it in real time. This was the moment the story truly turned. Because now Selena would do what people like her always do. She would try to come back. And Marcus would have to decide. Whether he would follow his father's last lesson. Or whether grief would push him into revenge. And that decision would define the rest of his life. The chapel stayed quiet, but the silence was no longer peaceful. It was sharp and heavy, like a courtroom after a verdict. Selena sat frozen with her hands clasped in her lap, and for the first time since Marcus met her she looked small, not because anyone attacked her but because truth had stripped her of the mask she wore. Her mother leaned toward her, whispering urgently. Her brother stared at Marcus like he had just watched a man rise from the dead. People in the room began murmuring softly because they understood something Selena did not yet fully accept. Jeremiah Holloway had been respected by powerful people for decades. And Selena had walked into his final hours with divorce papers and laughter. Marcus stood near the front, still holding the folded letter from his father inside his jacket. He did not smile. He did not gloat. He simply breathed. Because grief still sat on his chest like stone. The money did not remove that. The inheritance did not replace his father. It only revealed how alone Marcus truly was in that moment. Mr. Callahan finished the reading, then closed the folder calmly. He thanked everyone for attending and asked that those closest remain for a private conversation about arrangements. People began leaving slowly. Some approached Marcus offering condolences and quiet respect. Men in tailored suits shook his hand firmly. Women with composed expressions embraced him gently. Marcus realized these people were not here for a poor man's funeral. They were here because Jeremiah Holloway mattered in circles Marcus never knew existed. Selena remained seated. She did not move. She watched Marcus greet people, and each handshake felt like another nail in the coffin of her arrogance. Her mother whispered again, telling her to stand up and speak to Marcus immediately. Her brother told her quietly she needed to fix this before it was too late. Selena's aunt looked around nervously, realizing the room was filled with people who could crush them with a phone call. Selena finally stood, slowly smoothing her skirt, forcing her face into a sympathetic expression. She walked toward Marcus carefully, like someone approaching a lion pretending it is still a house cat. When she reached him, she placed a hand on his arm again and whispered his name softly, as if softness could erase what she did. Marcus looked at her. His eyes were red from grief. But his gaze was steady. Selena swallowed. She said she had no idea. She said she never knew about his father's wealth. She said she was overwhelmed and emotional, and she made a mistake. Marcus stared at her silently. Selena continued quickly, saying she never wanted to hurt him. She said she was just under pressure. She said she was scared about the future. Marcus finally spoke, and his voice was calm, but it carried weight. He said you were not scared. He said you were proud. Selena flinched slightly. Because that was the truth. She tried again. She said she was sorry for how she spoke. She said she should not have brought her family. She said she regrets everything. Marcus nodded slowly, not in forgiveness but acknowledgement. He said, "My father heard you." Selena's face tightened. Marcus continued quietly, saying he heard every word you said about him while he was dying. Selena's eyes filled with tears, but Marcus did not soften because he understood the tears were not grief. They were panic. Selena whispered that she wanted to be there for him now. She said they could start over. She said they could cancel the divorce. Marcus looked at her, and for a moment he saw the woman he once loved. Or rather, the woman he thought she was. But then he remembered her laughter. He remembered her mother's pity. He remembered her brother's smirk. He remembered the way she called his father a burden. And he remembered the letter in his jacket. Money is a tool, not a weapon. Revenge feels good for a moment, but integrity lasts forever. Marcus took a slow breath. He told Selena quietly that the divorce was already signed. He said it will proceed as written. Selena's eyes widened. She whispered, "Marcus, please." Marcus looked at her and said one sentence that cut deeper than shouting ever could. He said, "You did not leave me because you did not know I had money. He said you left me because you believed I had none." Selena froze. Her mouth opened but no words came out. Marcus stepped back, gently removing her hand from his arm without aggression. He said he needed space. Selena turned toward her family, desperate for support. Her mother stepped forward, smiling nervously, trying to regain control. She told Marcus they were all sorry and that families go through misunderstandings. She said Selena was just stressed. She said maybe Marcus could consider reconciliation. Marcus looked at her, and the calm in his face made her uncomfortable because she expected anger, not composure. He said respectfully that this was not a misunderstanding. He said this was character. Selena's brother scoffed under his breath, then caught himself when he noticed the powerful people still in the room watching. He forced a fake smile. Marcus turned away from them and continued speaking to Mr. Callahan about arrangements. Selena stood there, abandoned by her own confidence. People passed by her giving polite nods, but their eyes carried judgment. Not because she divorced Marcus, but because she chose the moment of death to humiliate. Selena's family began whispering urgently about what to do next. Her mother told her to talk to a lawyer immediately. Her aunt asked if she could still claim something. Her brother asked if the divorce papers included any settlement. Selena shook her head, slowly realizing she had demanded a clean divorce because she believed Marcus had nothing. She wanted no confusion later. Now she realized she had removed her own chance at claiming anything. Marcus left the chapel after the private meeting ended. He stepped outside into the cold air, breathing deeply. The sky was gray. The world looked unchanged. But everything in his life had shifted. He was now wealthy beyond imagination. And more alone than ever. That night Selena called him. Marcus did not answer. She texted him long paragraphs apologizing. He did not respond. She sent voice notes crying. He listened to none. Because he knew the apology was not for his pain. It was for her regret. The next morning Marcus met with legal counsel finalizing the divorce process. He asked for no revenge clauses, no public statements, no humiliation. He simply wanted it done. His lawyer advised him that Selena might attempt to contest. Marcus said she signed. The lawyer nodded. Marcus requested one thing only. He requested that Selena receive nothing beyond what the papers already stated. Not because he wanted to punish her. But because he refused to reward betrayal. He remembered his father's lesson. Integrity lasts forever. Selena's world began collapsing quickly. News traveled fast in their community. People whispered about how she divorced Marcus at the hospital. People spoke about how Jeremiah was a billionaire. People spoke about how Selena laughed. Her friends who praised her post about choosing herself began going silent. Her family felt exposed. Selena tried returning to work, but co-workers looked at her differently. Not with admiration. With caution. Because people do not trust someone who can humiliate a dying man. Selena realized she had not just lost money. She lost reputation. And reputation is harder to rebuild than wealth. Weeks later the divorce hearing was scheduled. Selena arrived dressed in her best suit, trying to look composed. Marcus arrived quietly in a simple black suit, looking calm. The courtroom was filled with whispers because the story had already spread. The judge reviewed the documents. Selena's lawyer attempted to argue for reconsideration, citing emotional distress. Marcus's lawyer responded calmly, stating Selena initiated the divorce voluntarily and signed without coercion. The judge looked at Selena. Selena tried to speak, but her voice trembled. The judge asked her if she understood what she signed. Selena whispered yes. The judge nodded. Then he finalized the divorce. Just like that. A marriage ended with a signature Selena once celebrated. Selena walked out of court shaking. Marcus walked out calmly. Outside reporters waited, asking about the inheritance. Marcus ignored them. He entered his car and left. Because he understood something now. Money was not the climax. The climax was the reveal of character. And the reveal had already happened. Selena lost more than $3 billion. She lost the man who would have loved her through anything. Because she could not love him through what she believed was nothing. And Marcus gained more than wealth. He gained clarity. About love. About loyalty. And about the kind of people money attracts. The next chapter would not be about Selena begging. It would be about Marcus deciding what kind of billionaire he wanted to become. And whether he would let pain harden him. Or let his father's legacy guide him forward. Because Jeremiah Holloway did not leave Marcus $3 billion. He left him a responsibility. To lead with humility. To protect his heart. And to never confuse silence for weakness again. After the divorce was finalized, the world did what it always does when it smells money and scandal at the same time. It leaned in. Marcus tried to stay private, but privacy becomes difficult when $3 billion appears like a spotlight in a dark room. Articles began circulating online about Jeremiah Holloway, the secret billionaire who lived modestly. People who never knew Marcus suddenly claimed they grew up with him. Old classmates sent messages pretending concern. Distant cousins appeared like ghosts asking for help. And Selena's family began moving like they were planning a comeback. Marcus watched it all with quiet discipline because grief had taught him something important. Most people do not love you. They love the version of you that benefits them. He moved out of the apartment he once shared with Selena not because it hurt too much but because he refused to live inside a memory that had already been poisoned. He bought a modest home in a gated community under a trust and kept it simple. He did not buy sports cars. He did not throw parties. He did not post online. He treated the wealth like a tool. Not a performance. Mr. Callahan introduced Marcus to the board members of Holloway Capital Holdings. Older men and women who had worked with Jeremiah for years. They greeted Marcus with respect but also curiosity because they wanted to know if the son carried the father's discipline. Marcus listened more than he spoke. He asked questions about operations ethics and long-term vision. The board was impressed because many heirs arrive loud and reckless. Marcus arrived quiet and focused. Jeremiah's plan was working even after death. Selena struggled in silence. At first she told herself she could still recover. She told herself she would find another wealthy man. She told herself she would rebuild her image. But the problem was not money. The problem was the story. The story of how she walked into a hospital room with her family and divorce papers while a dying man lay there. The story of how she mocked a son holding his father's hand. People in their community did not forget. Even people who disliked Marcus felt uncomfortable with Selena. Because cruelty at a funeral is not ambition. It is emptiness. Selena's friends started distancing. Some stopped inviting her out. Some stopped replying quickly. She noticed how silence can feel louder than insults. Her mother told her the world was jealous. Her brother told her Marcus was arrogant for refusing reconciliation. But Selena knew the truth. Marcus did not refuse her because of pride. He refused her because she revealed she could not be trusted. One day Selena showed up at Marcus's new home unannounced. She stood at the gate wearing a simple dress, no makeup, trying to look vulnerable. Security called Marcus asking if he wanted to see her. Marcus paused. He remembered the last time she entered a room with her family. He remembered the way she used witnesses to amplify humiliation. He told security to let her in. Not because he missed her. But because he wanted closure without drama. Selena walked into the living room slowly, looking around at the simplicity. She expected luxury. She expected gold and marble. But the home looked calm and modest. That confused her because she still believed wealth must be displayed. Marcus sat across from her, calmly offering water. Selena refused the water because she wanted emotion, not hospitality. She began crying quickly, saying she made the biggest mistake of her life. She said she was blinded. She said she was under pressure from her family. She said she loved him. Marcus listened quietly. Selena leaned forward, begging him to forgive her. She said they could start over. She said she would sign anything. She said she would leave her family. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then asked one question. He asked if she would still be here if his father died poor. Selena froze. Her tears slowed. Her mouth opened then closed. Because the answer lived in her memory. The answer was the divorce papers. Marcus nodded slowly. He said, "I forgive you." Selena's face lit up instantly. She reached for his hand. Marcus pulled his hand back gently. He said, "I forgive you for me." He said forgiveness does not mean access. Selena's face crumpled again. Marcus continued calmly, saying he was not angry anymore. He said he was simply clear. He said he would never again share his life with someone who could humiliate him in grief. Selena whispered, "Please, Marcus." Marcus stood up slowly, signaling the conversation was ending. He told her he wished her healing. He told her he hoped she becomes someone she can respect. Selena began sobbing louder. She said she was nothing without him. Marcus looked at her with sadness, not love. He said you were something before you ever met me. He said you just forgot who you were. Selena left the house broken. Not because Marcus rejected her, but because she finally understood that money did not make her lose him. Her character did. Meanwhile, Marcus began stepping into his father's world. He attended private meetings with investment partners. He visited properties. He reviewed philanthropic programs Jeremiah funded quietly. He learned that his father had built school-supported scholarships and paid medical bills for strangers without ever taking credit. Marcus felt pride. Not the pride of wealth. The pride of legacy. He decided to expand those programs. He created the Jeremiah Holloway Foundation publicly. He announced mentorship and entrepreneurship funding for young black students and business owners. The community reacted strongly. People praised Jeremiah's hidden generosity. Marcus spoke publicly only once. He said his father taught him that real wealth is the ability to change someone's life without needing applause. Selena watched the announcement online, sitting alone in her apartment. She saw Marcus standing calmly. She saw the way he carried himself. She saw the way the world respected him. And she realized something devastating. Marcus had always been a king. She just mocked him because he refused to wear a crown. The story continued. Not as revenge, but as a slow unfolding of legacy. Marcus became the kind of billionaire his father was. Quiet. Disciplined. Focused. And Selena became a woman forced to face the truth she avoided. That love without respect is not love. It is selfishness. And selfishness always collapses when reality arrives. The next chapter would not be about Selena anymore. It would be about Marcus choosing what to do with power. And what happens when the world finally learns the man they dismissed is now one of the richest men alive. Because money attracts attention. But character decides what that attention becomes. And Marcus was about to be tested in ways he never imagined. Just like his father predicted. The more Marcus stepped into Jeremiah's world, the more he realized his father had not simply built wealth, he built influence that moved quietly through banks, hospitals, real estate, and entire industries like an underground river feeding cities without anyone seeing the source. Every week Marcus sat in meetings with people who spoke carefully around him, not because they feared him but because they respected what Jeremiah represented. Some called Jeremiah a legend. Some called him a ghost. Some admitted they never knew how much he owned until the will was read. Marcus listened, absorbing everything. He learned that Holloway Capital was not one company. It was a web of holdings controlling major contracts across logistics, healthcare infrastructure, and technology. He learned his father owned shares in hospitals, including the one where he died. He learned Jeremiah funded research programs and community clinics in black neighborhoods where people still struggled. Marcus felt something settle inside him. A responsibility heavier than grief. Because now he understood why Jeremiah kept it secret. Wealth changes the air around you. It changes how people breathe. Back in Selena's world, the air was collapsing. Her job performance declined because her mind was consumed by regret. Co-workers whispered about her behind closed doors. Not because she divorced Marcus, but because she divorced him in the hospital. The cruelty was what followed her like a shadow. Selena tried to defend herself, saying she did not know about the inheritance. But that defense made people look at her even colder. Because it proved the worst thing. She only respected Marcus when money appeared. Her mother insisted Selena should sue. Her brother said Selena should claim emotional manipulation. Her aunt suggested Selena tell the media Marcus hid the inheritance from her. Selena listened, but she felt the poison in their advice. They were not trying to help her heal. They were trying to help her extract. And Selena realized something painful. Her family was the same reason she became who she was. They trained her to see people as ladders. They trained her to treat marriage like a transaction. They trained her to value status more than love. Selena began distancing from them quietly. Her mother called her ungrateful. Her brother mocked her. But Selena kept pulling away because she finally understood that staying close to them meant staying close to the part of herself that destroyed her marriage. One evening Selena attended a community gala where Marcus was scheduled to appear as the new head of the Jeremiah Holloway Foundation. She did not plan to attend. But the event was in the city and her co-workers insisted it was important networking. Selena arrived dressed elegantly, trying to look composed. The ballroom was filled with donors, executives and community leaders. A stage stood at the front with a banner honoring Jeremiah Holloway. Selena felt her stomach tighten as she walked in. Because the room was filled with people who knew the story. People glanced at her then looked away. Not with hostility. With quiet judgment. Selena moved through the crowd forcing smiles. Then the room shifted. A hush moved like wind. Because Marcus arrived. He walked in with calm presence, wearing a simple tailored suit, no flashy jewelry, no performance. People stood to greet him. Hands reached. Smiles widened. Respect filled the air. Selena watched from the side, feeling a sharp ache. She remembered calling him poor. She remembered calling him beneath her level. Now she watched the entire room treat him like royalty. Marcus stepped onto the stage and began speaking. He thanked everyone for honoring his father. He spoke about Jeremiah's humility. He spoke about service. He spoke about building quietly and giving quietly. His voice was steady. His words were simple but powerful. Selena felt tears rise because she realized Marcus was not changed by money. He was revealed by it. Marcus finished by announcing a major initiative. A scholarship program for children of single parents. A medical support fund for families who could not afford treatment. And a mentorship program for young men who lost fathers too early. The crowd applauded deeply. Selena stood frozen because she realized Marcus was turning grief into purpose. Something she never knew how to do. After the speech, Marcus stepped down and people surrounded him. Selena stayed at the edge watching. Her heart pounded. She told herself not to approach him. But her body moved anyway. She waited until the crowd thinned, then walked toward him slowly. Marcus noticed her immediately. His expression did not change. No anger. No warmth. Just calm recognition. Selena stood in front of him trembling. She whispered, "Marcus." Marcus nodded politely. Selena tried to speak but words tangled. She finally said she was sorry again. Marcus listened without interruption. Selena said she did not know how to live with what she did. Marcus looked at her quietly, then spoke in a low voice so only she could hear. He said the hardest part was not the divorce. He said the hardest part was watching my father hear your disrespect while he was dying. Selena's face crumpled. She whispered she was ashamed. Marcus nodded. He said shame can destroy you or it can teach you. He said that choice is yours. Selena asked him if he hated her. Marcus shook his head. He said hate keeps people connected. He said he was not connected anymore. Those words felt like a door closing softly. Selena whispered that she wished she could go back. Marcus said quietly that wishing does not change anything. He said only growth does. Selena nodded slowly, tears falling. Marcus stepped back politely. He said, "Take care, Selena." Then he turned and walked away. Selena stood there shaking, watching him disappear into the crowd. She realized that Marcus had forgiven her already. Not with words. But with distance. Because distance was his peace. Selena left the gala early. Outside she sat in her car and cried until her chest hurt. Not because she lost $3 billion. But because she lost the man she now realized was rare. A man who carried grief with dignity. A man who carried power with humility. A man who would have protected her. If she had protected him. The next morning Selena made a decision. She resigned from her job. Not because she was fired, but because she needed to rebuild her life away from the environment that fed her arrogance. She applied for a position at a nonprofit. A smaller role. Lower pay. Less status. But meaningful work. Her friends called her crazy. Her mother called her stupid. Selena ignored them. Because for the first time she was not choosing status. She was choosing transformation. Meanwhile Marcus continued building his foundation. Expanding his father's legacy. Quietly reshaping communities. And the world began learning that Jeremiah Holloway's son was not just rich. He was purposeful. And purpose attracts a different kind of attention. The next chapter would test Marcus again. Because wealth draws predators. And now Marcus would see who else had been waiting for his father to die. Not to mourn. But to claim. And Marcus would have to protect what Jeremiah built. While still honoring the man who taught him that integrity lasts forever. Because the inheritance was not just money. It was a battlefield. And the real fight was about to begin. The first sign that Marcus's inheritance was going to attract war came quietly, not through headlines but through a phone call from Mr. Callahan early one morning. Mr. Callahan's voice was calm but serious as he told Marcus that a legal petition had been filed against the estate. Marcus sat up in bed, instantly alert. He asked who filed it. Mr. Callahan paused, then said a woman named Denise Holloway. Marcus froze. Because he knew the name. Denise was Jeremiah's former partner from decades ago, a woman Marcus met only once when he was a child, and Jeremiah had introduced her as an old friend. Marcus remembered her smile, then polite but distant. He never saw her again. Now she was back. Not to mourn. To claim. Mr. Callahan explained that Denise was alleging Jeremiah promised her financial support and that she had a son. A son she claimed was also Jeremiah's. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. He asked if it was true. Mr. Callahan said Jeremiah never mentioned another child in any documents. But the petition demanded DNA testing and a share of the estate. Marcus sat in silence, gripping the phone. He did not know whether to feel betrayed or cautious. Because Jeremiah was a private man. A man who kept secrets even from his own son. Marcus met with attorneys that day. They explained that even if the claim was false, it could become public. It could become a scandal. It could weaken investor confidence. It could attract more opportunists. Marcus listened quietly, then asked one question. He asked what would his father do. Mr. Callahan answered that Jeremiah would handle it quietly, legally, and with dignity. Marcus nodded. He agreed. He authorized DNA testing if necessary. He refused to fight with insults. He refused to leak stories. He refused to turn his father's death into gossip. But the claim did not stay quiet. It leaked. Within days, social media headlines exploded. Secret billionaire leaves $3 billion inheritance, then mystery son appears. News outlets swarmed. People speculated. Talk shows discussed it like entertainment. Marcus became the center of a story he never asked for. Selena saw the headlines too. She watched from her small apartment where she now lived after leaving her job. She felt a strange ache. Because she knew Marcus was being attacked. And she knew she no longer had the right to stand beside him. Marcus stayed calm publicly. He released one short statement saying he would honor all legal processes respectfully and that his father's legacy deserved dignity. The statement was praised widely. People admired his composure. But behind closed doors Marcus felt shaken. Not because of money. Because he realized he did not fully know his father. He began reading old journals Jeremiah left behind in a locked drawer. Mr. Callahan delivered them, saying Jeremiah instructed they be given to Marcus only if his legacy was challenged. Marcus opened the journals carefully. The pages were filled with handwritten notes about business ethics, investment strategy, and life philosophy. Then Marcus found an entry from 30 years ago. Jeremiah wrote about Denise. He wrote about a relationship that ended painfully. He wrote that Denise became bitter when he refused to marry her because he sensed she loved the idea of his future more than the man himself. Jeremiah wrote that he paid her quietly to help her start a life. He wrote that she threatened to claim a child that was not his. Jeremiah wrote that he never believed the child was his but he could never prove it. Jeremiah wrote that he kept the situation quiet to protect his future family. Marcus sat back feeling his stomach twist. The story sounded familiar. A woman leaving when she thought a man had nothing. A woman returning when she smelled wealth. Marcus realized this pattern was not new in his life. It was generational. Jeremiah had built his entire secrecy around protecting Marcus from people like Denise. And yet Denise still found a way. The DNA test was scheduled. Denise arrived with her son, a man in his late 20s named Brandon. Brandon looked nervous, confused and overwhelmed as cameras flashed. Marcus saw Brandon's face and felt something unexpected. Not hatred. Curiosity. Because Brandon looked like someone dragged into a war he did not start. Denise stood tall, speaking to reporters, saying she only wanted justice. Her tone was polished. Her eyes were hungry. Marcus watched from inside a private building. He felt anger rise. Not because she challenged money. But because she was using his father's death as a weapon. The DNA results came back. Not a match. Brandon was not Jeremiah's son. The truth was undeniable. Denise's claim collapsed instantly. But the damage was already done. The headlines shifted from mystery son to scam exposed. People mocked Denise online. Denise tried defending herself, saying the test must be wrong. But no one listened. Marcus felt no satisfaction. He felt exhausted. Brandon approached Marcus privately later. He apologized quietly, saying he never wanted this. He said his mother told him his whole life that Jeremiah was his father. He said he believed it. Marcus looked at him and saw pain. Marcus said softly that he was sorry too. He said some people use lies to control others. Brandon's eyes filled with tears. He said he felt like his identity was stolen. Marcus nodded. He told Brandon he did not blame him. Then Marcus did something no one expected. He offered Brandon support. Not money. Not inheritance. But resources. Therapy. Education funding. A chance to rebuild his life free from his mother's manipulation. Brandon broke down crying. Because he had never been treated with dignity in the middle of chaos. Marcus's attorneys advised him not to do it. They said it would look weak. Marcus ignored them. Because Jeremiah taught him money is a tool, not a weapon. Marcus said, if I have $3 billion and I cannot use it to stop one young man from being destroyed, then I do not deserve any of it. Brandon accepted quietly. Denise was furious. She threatened lawsuits. She threatened media. Marcus remained calm. He filed legal action for fraud and defamation, but he requested no prison time. He requested only a public retraction and legal fees. Denise refused. The judge ordered her to pay damages. Denise's image collapsed. And the world watched Marcus handle it with dignity. Selena watched too. She saw Marcus protect a stranger. She saw him treat Brandon with compassion even after being attacked. And she realized something. Marcus was not just wealthy. He was good. And goodness is rarer than billions. Selena sat in silence, feeling regret again. Not because she wanted money. But because she realized she mocked a man whose heart was built for legacy. The next chapter would bring the final test. Because after Denise failed, others would try. And Marcus would soon face the hardest challenge of all. A challenge not from strangers. But from within his own bloodline. Because money does not just attract outsiders. It exposes family. And Jeremiah Holloway's family had been waiting quietly too. waiting for the moment the secret billionaire died. So they could come out of the shadows and claim what they believed was theirs. Marcus was about to learn that inheritance is not just wealth. It is war. And the war was only getting started. The DNA scandal faded from headlines within weeks, but it left Marcus with a new kind of awareness because he realized the world was not watching him as a grieving son anymore. The world was watching him as a target. Once people smelled $3 billion, they stopped seeing his humanity and started seeing opportunity. Mr. Callahan warned Marcus that the estate would attract more claims. Marcus nodded calmly because he already felt it happening. The calls increased. The emails multiplied. People with distant connections began appearing in his life like they had been waiting in a dark hallway. One afternoon Marcus received a request for a private meeting from his uncle Lionel, Jeremiah's older brother. Marcus had not seen Lionel in years. Not because of distance. Because Jeremiah had intentionally kept him away. Marcus remembered Lionel as loud, charming, and always asking for favors. When Marcus was a child, Lionel would visit occasionally, bringing gifts, then asking Jeremiah for money quietly afterward. Jeremiah always said no. And after each refusal, Lionel disappeared again. Now Lionel was back. Marcus agreed to meet him in a private office downtown with security present but discreet. Lionel arrived wearing an expensive suit that looked too new, like he bought it just for this moment. He hugged Marcus dramatically, saying he was sorry for Jeremiah. His eyes looked watery, but the emotion felt rehearsed. Marcus thanked him politely. Lionel sat down, leaning forward, lowering his voice, saying family needs to stick together now more than ever. Marcus listened. Lionel began talking about how Jeremiah always shut the family out. How Jeremiah acted like he was better. How Jeremiah refused to help them. Lionel said it was wrong. He said Jeremiah owed the family because they grew up together. Marcus stayed quiet. Lionel then smiled, saying, but now Jeremiah is gone and Marcus has the chance to fix what Jeremiah broke. Lionel slid a folder across the table. Inside were handwritten requests. A new house. A business investment. School fees. A car. A monthly allowance. Lionel spoke casually as if this was normal. He said the family deserves support. He said Marcus has more than enough. Marcus looked at the list calmly, then asked Lionel one question. He asked where Lionel was when Jeremiah was alive. Lionel laughed nervously, saying Jeremiah never listened. Marcus nodded. He asked again, where were you when my father was in that hospital bed? Lionel's smile tightened. He said he did not know. Marcus nodded again. He said softly, you did not know because you did not care to know. Lionel leaned back, irritated now. He said Marcus was acting just like Jeremiah. Marcus replied calmly, saying my father did not shut you out because he hated you. He shut you out because you only showed up when you wanted something. Lionel's face darkened. He said Marcus was being disrespectful. Marcus remained calm. He said I will help the family. But I will not be manipulated. Lionel asked what that meant. Marcus said it meant there would be no allowances, no handouts, and no emotional blackmail. Marcus said if anyone wanted help they could apply through the foundation programs like everyone else. Lionel scoffed, saying Marcus was humiliating them. Marcus said no. He said the humiliation is expecting love to be proven through money. Lionel stood up angrily, saying Marcus would regret this. Marcus looked up calmly and said quietly, I already know what regret feels like. Lionel stormed out. Mr. Callahan sighed softly, saying Lionel would not stop. Marcus nodded. He said let him try. Because Marcus understood now that wealth was not the hardest part. The hardest part was learning who truly loved him. Over the next month more relatives appeared. Cousins. Aunts. Second cousins Marcus had never met. They called crying, telling stories about hardship. Some were real. Some were exaggerated. Some were lies. Marcus decided to handle it systematically. He created a family support structure under the foundation with strict rules. Emergency aid. Education support. Medical assistance. But no cash transfers. No personal payments. No luxury requests. Every request required documentation. Every approval required review. The system angered many relatives. Because they wanted access, not structure. They wanted emotional leverage, not accountability. But Marcus held firm. He remembered Jeremiah's journal. He remembered how Jeremiah wrote that family can love you. Or consume you. And sometimes they do both. Meanwhile, Selena was rebuilding her life quietly at the nonprofit. She worked with children and families dealing with hospital bills. Ironically, she now saw daily what Marcus and Jeremiah had been funding quietly. She began hearing stories about Jeremiah Holloway. How he paid for surgeries. How he covered rent. How he supported clinics. Selena realized Jeremiah was never poor. He was generous. And she had mocked him. One day Selena was assigned a case. A single mother whose child needed urgent treatment. The bills were impossible. Selena worked hard calling agencies, applying for grants. Nothing moved fast enough. Then her supervisor told her there was one last option. Apply through the Jeremiah Holloway Foundation. Selena's stomach tightened. She filled out the application with shaking hands. She submitted it without mentioning her connection. Within 48 hours the foundation approved full coverage. Selena stared at the email stunned. She realized Marcus had built a system that helped strangers faster than she could help herself. And that realization crushed her. Because she understood how deeply she misjudged him. Marcus continued facing attacks. A former business partner of Jeremiah tried to claim a portion of shares. A distant cousin filed a lawsuit. A tabloid offered Selena money to speak publicly. Selena refused. For the first time in her life she refused money for status. Because she understood that selling Marcus's grief would destroy whatever humanity she had rebuilt. The pressure continued building until one day Marcus received the hardest news yet. A lawsuit from someone inside Holloway Capital. A senior executive claiming Jeremiah promised him ownership. The claim threatened company stability. The board panicked. Investors grew nervous. Marcus had to step fully into leadership now, not as an heir but as a protector. He called an emergency board meeting. He sat at the head of the table for the first time. The room fell silent. Executives stared at him expecting weakness because he was new. Marcus spoke calmly. He said, "My father built this company with discipline." He said, "Anyone trying to steal from his legacy will face truth, not emotion." He said, "We will fight legally. We will remain ethical. And we will not be shaken." His confidence steadied the room. The board voted unanimously to support him. The lawsuit was fought. Documents revealed the executive was lying. He was removed and charged. The company stabilized again. Marcus proved he was not just inheriting wealth. He was inheriting leadership. That victory shifted something. People stopped seeing him as Jeremiah's son only. They began seeing him as Marcus Holloway. A man who could hold power without becoming corrupted. And that was the final stage of the inheritance. Because now Marcus was no longer being tested by outsiders. He was being tested by the one person he could never escape. Himself. Would he stay humble? Would he stay disciplined? Would he stay kind? Or would the constant attacks harden him into someone unrecognizable? The final chapter was approaching. Not in court. Not in media. But in the quiet moment where Marcus would decide what to do with Selena. Because Selena was changing. And Marcus knew it. He could feel it through silence. And sometimes silence carries a message louder than begging. The story was about to end. Not with revenge. But with the hardest decision of all. Whether the past should remain buried. Or whether growth deserves a second chance. And that decision would not be about money. It would be about trust. Because trust once broken is not repaired by apologies. It is repaired by time. And time had been moving quietly. Just like Jeremiah always did. The final part was coming. And it would reveal whether love can survive the kind of betrayal that happens in a hospital room beside a dying father. Or whether some doors once closed should stay closed forever. Because Marcus Holloway had $3 billion now. But what he truly wanted was peace. The final stage of Marcus Holloway's inheritance did not arrive through another lawsuit or another greedy relative because by then Marcus had already learned how to handle predators. The final stage arrived through a quiet envelope delivered to his office without warning. No return address. No dramatic message. Just his name written neatly on the front. Marcus opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A handwritten letter from Selena. Not a text. Not a voice note. Not a long emotional paragraph begging. A real letter. The kind of letter people write when they know words matter and when they accept that the outcome is not theirs to control. Marcus read it alone. Selena wrote that she was sorry. Not for losing the money. Not for missing the lifestyle. Not for the headlines. She wrote that she was sorry for the hospital room. She wrote that she replayed it every night. She wrote that she hated the sound of her own laughter. She wrote that she could never undo what she did, but she wanted Marcus to know she finally understood what she destroyed. She wrote that she started working at a non-profit and that she now spent her days helping families in hospital corridors. She wrote that she finally understood grief. She wrote that she finally understood dignity. She wrote that she finally understood that love without respect is violence. She wrote that she did not expect forgiveness. She wrote that she did not deserve a second chance. She wrote that she simply wanted Marcus to know she was changing. Not for him. For herself. She ended the letter with one sentence that hit Marcus harder than everything else. She wrote, "Your father raised a good man and I tried to break him because I did not know how to stand beside goodness." Marcus sat still for a long time after reading. He did not feel anger. He did not feel relief. He felt something deeper. He felt the quiet ache of remembering how much he once loved her before she became cruel. He thought about his father's final words. "Do not carry her shame." He realized that his father did not want Marcus poisoned by resentment. But his father also did not want Marcus destroyed by softness. Marcus folded the letter carefully and placed it in his desk. He did not respond immediately. Days passed. Then weeks. Marcus focused on work. On the foundation. On protecting Holloway Capital. On mentoring young men who lost fathers. On building something steady. He felt his father's presence in every decision. Not as pressure. As guidance. One evening Marcus visited the clinic his foundation funded. He walked through hallways where families sat with tired eyes. He watched nurses move quickly. He watched children clutch stuffed animals. The smell of antiseptic hit him hard. It pulled him back to the VIP suite. Back to his father's last breath. Back to Selena's voice. Marcus stepped outside the clinic needing air. And that was when he saw her. Selena stood near the entrance wearing simple clothes holding a folder of paperwork. She was helping a mother fill out forms. She did not notice Marcus at first. Her hair was pulled back. Her face looked tired. Not tired from partying. Tired from work. Real work. Marcus watched quietly. He saw her kneel beside the child smiling gently. He saw her hand the mother a tissue. He saw her speak softly. No arrogance. No performance. Just presence. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Because this was not the Selena who came into the hospital room with her family like an audience. This was a different woman. Not perfect. But honest. Selena finally looked up and saw Marcus standing there. Her eyes widened. Her body froze. She did not run toward him. She did not cry dramatically. She simply stood slowly and nodded once. Marcus nodded back. The mother Selena was helping looked confused. Selena told her softly she would return in a moment. She walked toward Marcus, carefully stopping a few feet away. Her hands trembled slightly. She whispered Marcus. Marcus said her name quietly. Selena swallowed. She said she did not know he would be here. Marcus said he comes often. Selena nodded. Silence stretched between them. Not awkward. Heavy. Because both of them carried memory. Selena finally spoke. She said she understands if he never wants to speak to her again. Marcus looked at her calmly. He asked her one question. He asked why she chose this work. Selena looked down, then said, because I needed to feel what I ignored. She said I needed to sit in the same halls where I humiliated you. She said I needed to learn what grief looks like on strangers. She said I needed to earn humility. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, my father would have respected that. Selena's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall dramatically. She blinked them back. Marcus took a slow breath. He said he would never forget the hospital room. He said that moment changed him forever. Selena nodded. She whispered, I know. Marcus continued. He said, but he also refused to live with hatred. He said he forgave her a long time ago. Selena's face crumpled slightly. Marcus raised a hand, gently stopping her from speaking. He said forgiveness does not mean the past disappears. He said forgiveness means the past no longer controls the future. Selena whispered, does that mean there is a future for us? Marcus paused. This was the moment. The hardest decision. Not about money. About trust. Marcus looked at Selena and he saw the woman she had become. But he also saw the woman she had been. He remembered his father's death. He remembered the cruelty. He remembered the laughter. He remembered the way she brought her family to witness his pain. Marcus spoke slowly. He said, I do not know. Selena nodded, accepting that answer without argument. Marcus said, trust is not rebuilt with one letter. He said trust is rebuilt with years. Selena whispered, I will wait. Marcus shook his head gently. He said, do not wait for me. He said, build your life. He said, become who you want to be. He said, if our paths cross again and the truth is still there, then we will see. Selena nodded, tears finally falling quietly. She said, thank you for not hating me. Marcus nodded. He said, take care, Selena. Then he turned and walked away. Selena stood there watching him go. Not with desperation. With understanding. Because she realized she did not deserve him. But she could still become someone worthy of her own respect. Marcus drove home that night feeling something settle. Not love. Not reunion. Peace. Because he realized the story did not need a dramatic ending. It needed a truthful one. His wife came to the hospital with her family and divorce papers, thinking she was leaving a poor man. But she did not know his father was a secret billionaire. She did not know $3 billion was already signed into Marcus's name. And when the truth came out, she learned the hardest lesson of her life. That the richest thing a man can have is not money. It is dignity. And the most expensive thing a person can lose is not wealth. It is a good heart. Marcus did not become cruel after betrayal. He became clearer. He did not use the inheritance as revenge. He used it as legacy. And that was Jeremiah Holloway's final gift. Not $3 billion. But the kind of strength that stays humble even when the world tries to make you bitter. And that kind of strength is priceless.